Hey, all the What the Tech product management viewers. My name is Shruti. I'm a product manager at Snowflake, and we are back in doing few new episodes for What the Tech is product management. Nishan, quick intros.
Hey everyone, long time no see. Good to see you all again. And we will be chatting about how to build a roadmap this session. Let's go for it.
Sure. So, Nishan, now that we are out of the introductions and we have done quite a few sessions, on different topics, I think roadmap is the tool, one of the tool that is necessary throughout your product management levels, right? Like no matter what level you are, you need to either build a roadmap from a strategy perspective or from an execution perspective or both, right? And we think that is a very necessary topic. So tell me a little about like what is a product roadmap?
For sure. So again, it's an abstract topic. For many people have different definitions, but the way I look at it is it is a way to get your entire team understand what's your end vision and how do you get there. It's just like with Google Maps, right? So you have a destination in mind. If there is no clear roadmap, you would just be lost. And especially imagine a bunch of friends going to the same destination, then all of a sudden there's no clear way to coordinate your entire trip.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I see a roadmap to be. Once we can come up with the initial understanding of where the product gap is or the business opportunity is, we define how our company or my product fits into that equation. How do we make a difference in that space? And then it's almost always thinking about how do I break it down into a problem that the rest of the team can understand,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is design, engineering, business, it doesn't matter. Everyone would want to understand, okay, how are we getting there? And
Mm-hmm.
what are some internal milestones? Because sometimes a roadmap could be multi-quarter, multi-year, multi-month, right? So if it's a smaller roadmap, it's okay. You do not need as much coordination.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's the longer one, you could use it both for coordination as well as motivation.
Yeah.
Because when the destination is so far off, it becomes difficult to keep the same amount of energy along the way. So yeah, that's in a nutshell a roadmap, a
Yeah.
quick milestone checker for everyone and giving everyone like a compass to head towards your direction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like in summary, it's all about where are we headed? Why does it matter? And, like how are you going to reach there, right? Like that's pretty much what roadmap is trying to define. And as to your point, it pretty much could be like a shorter term roadmap depending on I think it especially varies from level. Like earlier in my career, I used to do, like this exercise for next 6 to 12 months. And I've seen as we move up the career, usually the questions you'll get asked is like what is your viewpoint from a 3-year perspective or a 2-year perspective for a product, right? So it
Exactly.
starts varying as you work on different products, as you move up the ladder. So the thing that you want to build as you are doing this exercise is having that long term view, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how do you go about building such roadmaps, Shruti? Like again, let's start off with what did you do when you were young and building your first roadmap? And then we can probably evolve that into a conversation of like how do we do it today?
I think when I started on the product management path, the earlier cycles are very much to prove your execution, part of your skill set, right? So it very much is like, hey, we know what problem to solve, and we have some ideation of like, okay, what it looks like, right? So your leaders will, probably let's say you're working under a staff product manager or like a senior product manager, they'll come and tell you that, hey, this is a problem, I've thought about it, this is the segmentation. Now these are the things that you want to solve in like next six months usually. And then okay, finally, as you come to a 6 months, then you think about the next 6 months. For
Right.
example, when I was early in my career, I was working on a mobile app to administer and monitor storage systems, right? So it was very well defined that we are building a mobile app, why we are building, what is the use case that we are trying to solve, what customer segmentation we are trying to solve. And it was like, okay, now do I need to solve for problem A versus problem B? Was more of the thing for this segmentation, right? Like within that problem space, like you can further granularize it, and then you have to understand, okay, which one is more important and which one is a a product mark which one will help you attain a quicker product market fit is the question that you're trying to solve very early in your career, right?
Sure.
And then obviously, I think some parts that continue no matter where you are is the stakeholder management, right? So writing a roadmap, making sure that your edge counterparts, your UX counterparts, your research counterparts are involved to give you feedback is something that you will continue to have, no matter what part or what level you go. And as I entered like more like like senior levels, it started to change from like, okay, what problem do you need to execute to who are you trying to solve for, right? So it clearly became like, who are you trying to solve for? Will you really be able to solve for, like, let's say, I was recently doing a product roadmap, and I had to really think about the different segment that exist in industry, and with the
Hmm.
product that we are thinking about, which segment would it solve for, and what is my roadmap for the other segments long term to get there, right? So let's say if a segment can help you achieve 3x and the other segments in total can help you achieve a 10x of revenue, what does your roadmap need to look like? And what are your challenges that you should be surfacing to your leadership in order to get to that 10x revenue path? Right. So it kind
Gotcha.
of changes there. So I think like, who are you building? Why are you building? Will probably be a very important question that you should learn no matter what level you are. You'll focus more on what you're building in your initial phase, but you'll grow into like solving for these two problems for your roadmap.
That's amazing. And I think like that's one of the most fascinating thing about product management, right? Initially, we're being told how to solve things or what to solve for, and we get to a stage where we're able to define that problem space. Like when you were describing how you go about it, it actually made me think of like a recent experience with my nephew where we were building like a 1,000 piece puzzle, and there's some similarities in there in the sense that you cannot solve all of it at the same time. So what you end up doing is you're picking up similar colored pieces together. You're
Yes,
grouping them into different blocks and then deciding that, okay, some of them are easier or some of them are critical. Like this is the center of the piece or this is the edge of the puzzle. So I need to solve for this first before the rest of it.
yep,
So at some level, we're talking about grouping the problem into a team. Okay, here are
yep,
the different teams in there.
yep,
And then also some level of sequencing.
yes,
Okay, what do I solve first versus next? And
yep,
sometimes it's about prioritization as well, right?
yes,
Okay, while it might be logical to solve a problem in like A, B, C, D, but
yeah,
within A, there could be like four steps. And within
yes,
those four steps, like where do you have the best leverage or which
exactly,
will reduce the ambiguity of the problem, right?
yes,
So just thinking about it, that like real life scenario, it feels like, oh, it's not rocket science,
yeah,
but when you start adding this problem to your point of there's so many stakeholders, so much unknown information, we
yeah,
don't even know what the piece's color is to begin with. Or
yes,
there's an unknown piece. It's
yes,
like a magic piece. We'll know only it'll get unlocked after like probably 3 months,
yeah.
right? So it's
I
a
think
fun place to be in.
it is definitely fun, and I think like with time I've realized the ambiguity just grows, and like that's what you are being told to solve as you grow in your career path as well. Like having a very clear view of like, who can you really address the problem, where can you really address the problem, and how soon can you really address the problem is what the execs are looking from a product manager, right? Like that's our whole job.
Yeah,
Um and like it is a very levitating kind of exercise, because this does not just this a needs stakeholder management. Like you need to really talk to your architects, your UX research, your engineering lead, to make sure that you have the right resources, you have the right data. At the same time, some of these things would need you to do like plenty of exercises with customers, right? Brainstorming, really asking them that, hey, I think one of the things that my mentor told me, that if you're trying to solve a problem which the customer is may about, then it's not worth solving. And that is one of the things that should come out of a roadmap exercise, that is it a right problem to solve at this point of time, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
so
like that ambiguity piece also is so interesting, right? So when it is absolutely defined for us as young PMs, okay, what problem to solve, Then it
Yeah.
only becomes an exercise of, oh, let me break down this problem as granular as I can,
Yes.
and let's make sure that everyone is bought in and that the timelines are like to the dot, right? While it is challenging, and there's nothing to take away from the initial ropes of the work that we learn,
Yep.
it feels like the real value gets unlocked when we're able to define those smaller pieces of the puzzle. Okay,
Yep.
why do we solve it? When do we solve it? How is it fitting into the larger narrative of the organization? Because
Yep.
sometimes building a roadmap within like a large organization like a Snowflake, or even like a even bigger organization like Walmart, it's about bringing visibility to the problem because there's
Yes.
so many great problems to solve for, and ensuring that they're tying back into things that the corporate cares for, because the
Yes.
same problem could be viewed in different shades of light. And if you can sometimes you can position it as an efficiency play. In another
Yep.
case, it could be like a revenue play. So depending on the dynamics of the organization, you should be able to craft that narrative, champion your roadmap across the various
Yep.
stakeholders, understand where the power is. Like sometimes it's with the sales reps,
Yes.
sometimes it's with the PMM, sometimes it's
Yep.
with your engineering counterparts.
Yep.
Understanding what kind of product needs what kind of champions,
Yep.
tying them up and building that momentum. I think it's like a lot of art to it, but if you do it long enough, it becomes like a structured approach to problem solving.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add to like this whole roadmap building exercises, um, we always say that your roadmap for next 3 to 6 months is where your confidence level should be very high, because obviously as you're going through this segmentation, customer interviews, stakeholder interviews, you'll realize that okay, I know enough that this product is like at least has a place from a medium term perspective, right? And that's why you're putting these engineering resources. You don't want to invest in something that's like a 2 day thing, or probably like you don't want to form a team that is just building a 2 day thing or a month worth of product, right?
Yeah,
Again, that's probably to an enterprise space, so you typically look 3 to 6 months out, um, with a high confidence. And beyond 6 months it should be like we usually say 6 to 12 months you have 50% confidence, and beyond 12 months you have a sight towards thing, right? Like what, how could the market change, what are the different things that could come from a competitive landscape, that could interrupt what you're trying to do. So that's where you have low confidence, but you have a sight that okay, this is where I need to reach in order to really win the market.
of course. That makes a lot of sense. And I think like we covered a good part of how to build a good roadmap. I think
Yeah.
how do we use a roadmap as well. Maybe in the last half, let's talk about like what are some typical mistakes that people make when they're building a roadmap.
I think I would love to hear your thoughts, but like one of the things that I've run very usually, and like I've been like before my current role, I was a platform product manager for a long period of time. And whenever I joined a team, it always felt like, the team was operating in a backlog mode, right?
Hmm.
So, it would like be working on a backlog of features which the other peripheral teams had requested out of the central team, right?
Right.
So what it led to was a lot of short term thinking, right? Like when you were designing workflows, it was very short term, that okay, I just need to kick this feature out of my backlog, so let's get a UX designer, let's get an engineer, and let's work on it. What it leads to is like it's a short term thinking, so like you're not really thinking of how the customer might actually interact with the product, right? So
Hmm.
that would be a gotcha. B, again, from an engineer perspective, think today I'm working on one part of platform, then I'm working on another part of platform. Sure, it gives me an understanding and overview of the overall platform, but I'm not growing my skill set into a domain, right? So like typically I've seen like my engineers felt like okay, I am kind of all over the place, right?
Hmm.
And then the third thing was you could never, as a PM, tell what value did you bring other than like backlog grooming, right? And that's like what I've felt is one of the things that you, as a product manager, no matter what level you are, you should start tying the story to a higher level objective. And even that backlog grooming could become a very healthy roadmap exercise where you can find themes. You can actually say, okay, this is the end goal for this particular theme, and this is how we backtrack, and this is where this backlog item fits into the picture, right? So
Sure.
it kind of ties everything together, and then you start to assign these engineers to these themes so that they're always operating on a theme, right, rather than multiple themes altogether.
Love that. Because end of the day, without the idea of a theme, it just becomes like, again, going back to the previous example, it's thousand pieces of distinct things. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to make sense out of it. So taking the example of, like, let's say we are Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and we are building Instagram for the first time, you could be like, okay, onboarding could be a step,
Yep.
uploading could be a step, viewing could be a step, scrolling
Yes.
could be a step. So each
Right.
of them become like massive roadmaps in themselves,
Yep.
and it makes it easy for people to tie back to an experience
Yep.
as much as possible, right? Sometimes they're like enterprise software, there's no UI,
Yep.
and there'll be other components that we're still able to tie them back to. So
Yep.
as long as there's a team on top of all the chaos,
Yeah.
people are able to get married to the larger vision that we have in mind.
Yep.
And one more thing that actually comes to my mind is underestimating the amount of time or overestimating the amount of time for a given milestone.
Yeah.
So what I know, it's tricky to get a sense for it ahead of time. Like you probably are in the range of plus or minus 25% to begin with. You pick a new product, you'll
Mm-hmm.
always get it wrong. You're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to know it when the product is going to launch, right?
Yep.
So I don't know today, like when is my product launching?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone ever does.
Yep.
But that error or the range of error should be lower and lower as we spend more time with the product. Otherwise, you sort of tend to lose the confidence of multiple stakeholders. The
Yes.
the dev team would rather want to build it exactly on time. They don't want to build it ahead of time or later. They don't want
Mhm.
to be delayed. No one wants to be delayed.
Yeah.
But building it ahead of time also has a cost because
Yeah.
there'll be a buffer amount of period where there's like an opportunity. They could have worked on something else that is more important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a more sophisticated manager, product manager who's able to understand the larger dynamics of your organization, I
Yeah.
think you should get better with time. But it's
Yes.
okay to start somewhere as long as you are improving and headed in that direction.
Yeah, and that's where, I feel like what we discussed initially, that having stakeholders involved early on in the roadmap exercise really helps.
Yeah,
So let's say if you had like a tech counterpart involved, right? They'll be able to tell you if this is something that can truly be built in a near term, or it needs fundamental architectural changes in the product, right? Like, or it would not. And it could start with like just doing like, two POC sessions with the tech lead and just getting a look and feel, right? Like, I think that is one of the exercise that in my previous team we used to do fairly often, because we were building UIs and we wanted to understand, for example, do we have the right metrics? Do we have the metrics in a performant manner to even expose on the UI, right? So all of these things kind of help you understand how quickly can things be built rather than
actually, I like
assumptions.
the last one too. Like instrumentation is not thought as part of roadmap or as part of product.
Yeah.
It's such a critical skill to have to constantly be thinking in terms of, okay, in 3 months, I would want to know if this product is working. And for that, I need to be able to add parameters to various steps.
Yes.
Only then I'm able to get the feedback and like the reporting that I'm looking for
Yeah.
or the logging that I care for, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like there should be like a separate section for maintenance and instrumentation.
Yeah.
That's like another key part that at least I missed in my first iteration,
Yeah.
only to eventually realize that okay, that has to be like a holy grail of roadmaps.
Yeah, I think it usually comes when you are starting, and this was the same thing, right? Like data was always an afterthought, but in today's world it's a before thought. Like you start from an impact, you start from an OKR. So it really is super important to have data, because when you do execute on a part of roadmap, things you would get asked is like, okay, tell me how is the product performing, right? And if you
Exactly.
don't have the right data to suffice that, then you also end up losing the stakeholders trust. Cool. So to summarize this section, I think it pretty much comes to like, make sure that you're not treating a roadmap like a backlog feature. I guess, you're not operating in vacuum. You're talking to your stakeholders, and then like you're not locking the dates too early, which kind of ties to the second theme. But yeah, you're really getting into a pace of understanding your product, but also involving the stakeholders to make the right structure and the right sequence of things on the roadmap and locking dates accordingly.
Love it. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Shruti. I think this was fun. We should do
Yeah.
more of these and more often and keep them shorter. I think,
Yes.
like with this attention economy, I don't think people would be looking at larger videos anyway.
Definitely.
unless we have some fancy speakers. But yeah, I love this theme. Let's keep going.
Same here. And for our viewers, let us know if there are any other topics that you would want us to talk about. We'll obviously get started on getting more and more leaders to join our session and give you overview of similar things as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.